Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order the regular monthly meeting of the Newport News School Board for Tuesday, March 19th, 2019. On behalf of the members of the school board and our superintendent, I welcome each of you watching and present. A quorum is present to transact the business of the school division. We will begin tonight's meeting with the invocation and pledge to the flag. Here to do the honors are two students from Rich Neck Elementary School, Mr. Carmine McDaniel and Lorenzo Holly. First, Carmine will come forward and deliver the invocation, and he will be followed by Mr. Lorenzo, who will come forth and deliver the pledge. Mr. Carmine, would you please come forward? Tell us a little bit about yourself before you get started.
I go to Rich Neck Elementary School. My name is Carmine McDaniel. I'm a 5th grade student, and yep. I'm reading Good Advice to Live by author unknown. If you want your dreams to come true, don't oversleep. The smallest good deed is better than the grandest intention. Of all the things you wear, your expression is the most important. The best vitamin for making friends is B1.
All right.
The 10 Commandments are not multiple choice. The happiness of your life depends on your quality of your thoughts. Minds are like parachutes. They function only when open. Ideas won't work unless you do. One thing you can't recycle is wasted time. One who lacks the courage to start has already finished. The heaviest thing to carry is a grudge. Don't learn safety rules by accident.
Thank you, Carmine. Let me tell you something. I need a copy of that. Next, we'll have Mr. Lorenzo will come forth and tell us a little bit about yourself before you give us the pledge.
Good afternoon. My name is Lorenzo Holly. I'm in 5th grade in Rich Neck Elementary School. My favorite subject in school is math. I love to play football, and I'm a good friend.
All right. All right.
Stand. All right. You gonna lead us?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Supporting Carmine and Lorenzo tonight are their family members and their school family. Could they please stand and be recognized? The board appreciates the encouragement you've given these two young men. Again, let me tell you, both of you gents did a wonderful, wonderful job. I look forward one day seeing you up here or on the television, one playing football or one's a philosopher over there. We're going to continue with the agenda, and we have board recognitions. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Chairman, and we'll move forward with the recognitions at this time.
I have the honor of presenting this month's school board recognitions. School division plant or facility managers ensure safe, efficient, and attractive schools and offices. They oversee the general maintenance and repair of all buildings, air conditioning and heating systems, electrical systems, roofs, doors, windows, locks, a whole lot more, and they ensure that school grounds are well maintained and safe for our students. It's a huge job, especially with a school division the size of Newport News Public Schools, with 75 buildings and 114 learning cottages. which equates to about 4.5 million square feet to manage. Tonight, we're happy to share that our Executive Director of Plant Services has been doing this job well and has earned national recognition. Keith Webb was recently named the National School Plant Manager of the Year by the National Association. Mr. Webb, would you please come forward? Mr. Webb has served Newport News Public Schools for 27 years, working his way up from Assistant Maintenance Supervisor to the Executive Director of the department. During his tenure, Mr. Webb has led the school division's energy efficiency initiatives. We've completed one 12-year energy performance contract, and we've started on another 15-year contract. These contracts have allowed the school division to complete many needed capital improvements while lowering energy costs. As a result of his leadership, Newport News Public Schools has received many awards and recognitions. The American School and University's Green Cleaning Award, Energy Star status for several schools, the Virginia School Board Association's Green School Challenge, the Green Award from the American School and University Magazine and Healthy Schools campaign for the best K-12 cleaning program in the nation, and the National School Plant Managers Association's Facilities Masters Award. Mr. Webb manages a department of hundreds of dedicated employees, and he shares his expertise with his colleagues both locally and nationally through plant manager organizations and other associations. Mr. Webb, congratulations on this well-deserved national honor. Joining Mr. Webb this evening are members of his family and his work colleagues. Would you please stand to be recognized? Thank you for joining us. Our next honorees are state champions who ran their way to a state title in the 4x200 meter relay during the indoor track state competition. And they've certainly made their Heritage High School 5800 family proud. Please join me in recognizing our all-stars from Heritage and Achievable Dream High Schools. Sherelle Lindsay. Sherelle attends Achievable Dream. Janiyah Thomas. Jayla Williams. And rounding out the team is Angela Tubman, who was unable to be present this evening. Yes, just a moment. At the state 4A meet, these ladies led from the start to finish, winning in just, it was about 1 minute, 47 seconds. Is that okay? And each of them had to do a 200 meter leg of that. So I'm just impressed. It would take me like 5 minutes to, finish. These athletes are also individual standouts as well, but together they're state champions. Again, congratulations. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the members of their family who joined them and friends. Would you please stand and be recognized? And you saw their proud principal, Shamika Gerald from Heritage. Miss Gerald. Our next honoree was named Best in the State as well. Morgan Merritt of Mentrell High School was named the Virginia High School League Group 5 Field Hockey State Player of the Year. Ms. Merritt, would you please come forward? Okay. Ms. Merritt has had a fantastic season and career. She finished her 4-year varsity career with 95 goals and 54 assists.
Wow.
And the former number is impressive because much of her work as a center fielder was to set up her teammates. She tallied 36 goals and 22 assists just this season, breaking the career school marks in both categories and for total points. She also racked up many other accolades. She was named the first team All-State Group 5 midfielder, and she earned the same for the region and the district. And she was also voted the Daily Press Player of the Year and the National Field Hockey Coaches Association Player of the Month for September, October, and November. Congratulations, Ms. Merritt, and we'd also like to acknowledge your family that's present. Would you please stand and be recognized? And I'd also like to acknowledge her principal and coaches and other members of the Mentrell family who are here. Would you please stand and be recognized? Our next honorees are gifted musicians. They're among the best musicians in the state and have earned the All-Virginia distinction. To reach this accomplishment, high school students must audition and earn a top chair or place in the district event, which enables them eligible to audition for an All-Virginia Performance Ensemble. Newport News Public Schools is proud to recognize 10 students tonight that have earned this honor. As I call your name, would you please come forward? Named to the All-Virginia Chorus from Heritage, Olivia Cooper. And Jayla Usher, who was unable to join us. From Warwick High School, Lyric Slaughter. From Woodside High School, Reagan Craze. Jazon Holmes. Jason. Our own Maria Jones. And also Sydney Morrissey, who was unable to join us this evening. Named to the All-Virginia Band from Mentrell High School, Courtney Hodge. And named to the All-Virginia Guitar Ensemble from Mentrell, Sam Cornett. And Michael Keel. So standing before you are our students that have been named to the All-Virginia Performance Ensemble. So congratulations, ladies.
right, guys. Thank you so much.
While they're making their way back to their seats, I'd like to ask the family members and the school administrators and their music teachers if you would all please stand and be recognized as well. Thank you very much. Again, we congratulate all of tonight's honorees. At this time, we'll take about a 6-minute break so that our honorees and their guests may leave if you choose to do so. You're always welcome to stay. During this time, our viewing audience will have the opportunity to view this month's School Board Spotlight. So we'll stay in recess for about 6 minutes. Thank you.
Young men in Newport News Public Schools are becoming equipped to rise above any challenge as they grow into the leaders of tomorrow. 8th through 11th grade males were invited to attend RISE, a male empowerment conference at Heritage High School. The Saturday event was organized by the NNPS Youth Development Team and included an informative panel discussion, interactive breakout sessions, and dynamic presentations. 300 students attended the free conference, representing every middle and high school in Newport News. Superintendent Dr. George Parker greeted the audience of young men and thanked the numerous educators, community partners, and student volunteers who made this conference a success. A panel discussion included men with strong ties to Hampton Roads, each with their own compelling stories and life experiences about overcoming adversities, achieving goals, and succeeding academically. Students were able to select from a variety of engaging breakout sessions, focused on equipping them for emotional, social, academic, and future success. Educators, police officers, and community leaders created a safe place for students to listen and share, while discussing such topics as becoming a man, making responsible decisions, and maintaining positive relationships. Parents and caregivers were also invited to attend breakout sessions focused on helping their young men grow and assisting with college and career planning. By gaining additional skills, knowledge, and experiences through RISE, these young men have bright futures ahead of them as they seek success in all aspects of their lives. Students at Woodside High School are no dummies. Well, maybe just a couple of them are, but it's all for a great cause. The Seatbelt Club pulled out all the stops this year while encouraging their classmates and staff to stay safe on the roads. 32 high schools across Hampton Roads, including Woodside, competed in the annual Get It Together Seatbelt Challenge, presented by Drive Safe Hampton Roads, and the stakes couldn't be higher. During lunch, Seatbelt Club members collected signatures from students and educators who all pledged to buckle up every time they're in a car. In classrooms, students decorated their walls with catchy phrases, while pamphlets were distributed throughout the student parking lot to share the important facts about seatbelt usage. Students wore impairment goggles to see for themselves the dangerous effects of alcohol, and students and staff made safety education fun by holding seatbelt relay competitions. On random mornings throughout the school year, crash test dummies Vince and Larry teamed up with local State Farm agent Ann Sparkman to keep track of how many drivers and passengers were wearing their seatbelts. This active attentiveness helped increase Woodside's overall seatbelt usage. Students also dressed as ghosts to dramatically illustrate the dangers that texting and distractions can have on drivers. At Woodside High School, the Seatbelt Club is driving their message home so that an entire school can keep their future hopes alive. For the 26th year, high school students in Newport News Public Schools were invited to participate in Artistic Verses, a partnership between the Peninsula Fine Arts Center and the Secondary English Department that allows students to use their life experiences and creative writing skills to create poetry inspired by art. 400 years ago, the first Africans arrived on the shores of North America at Point Comfort, Virginia, what is now known as Fort Monroe in Hampton. To commemorate this historical anniversary and celebrate the resiliency and cultural contributions of Africans in America, the Peninsula Fine Arts Center collected a range of African-inspired artifacts and art. Some of the pieces included masks, tools, and personal items from different ethnic groups in Africa. There were also informative displays and an interactive exhibition called Cash Crop that depicts the hardships and horrors of the slave trade. Almost 100 students from 5 Newport News high schools and 2 alternative learning sites were able to visit these galleries to see the beauty and power of the art on display. Volunteer docents and staff guided the students through each gallery, offering unique insights on the collection as students selected one piece to write about. Nathan Richardson, a local published author and accomplished performance poet, coached the students on skillfully transforming their impressions of the art into poetic responses. After fine-tuning their poetry with the guidance of their English and creative writing teachers, the students submitted their poems for judging. During a weekend ceremony at the Peninsula Fine Arts Center, the top winners were recognized and received monetary prizes for their poetry. All students in attendance were invited to read their works aloud, sharing a range of thoughts, emotions, and creative responses to a history and culture that continues to shape the landscape of America.
Good evening again, and welcome back, and hope you enjoyed our school board spotlight. During our meetings, we provided time for the public to address the board. These are scheduled at the early part of the agenda and also toward the end of the meeting. The board considers this an opportunity to listen to your comments. Please understand that we will consider your concerns or get back with you at a later time. Please comply with our 3-minute limit. As you begin your comments, a green light comes on. A yellow light signals that you have 30 seconds remaining. A red light in the beep indicates that your time is up. We ask at that time that you would bring your comments to an end. So as you hear your name, would you please come up? And we do have cards. So the first is Samuel L. Ewell Jr., is that correct? Urick.
Dr. Parker, members of the school board, My name is Sam Urey. I'm an employee of Newport News Public Schools and a proud member of the Newport News Education Association. It's time for us to be people of action and not words. This is not a criticism directed at you, the school board, or the school administration. It does relate to ensuring our priorities match up with what we fund. Kind of a follow the money thing. Money should direct people to what your mission, vision, values, and priorities are. Our children, the children of Newport News, must be our priority. They must be our priority even if it does not appear to be the priority of those in Richmond. These are the facts, and the facts are important. The State Board of Education established standards of quality, SOQ. These standards set the bar at 1 counselor for every 250 students. Let's not talk about the change in ratio that should have happened for psychologists, nurses, and social workers that have not been addressed yet. The only thing Richmond has addressed was counselors, so we'll stay focused on counselors. Newport News, for Newport News, the current standard is roughly about 1 for 500 in elementary school, 1 for 400 in middle school, and 1 for every 350 high school students. That ratio puts roughly 29.4 counselors for our elementary schools, 15.6 for middle school students, and 22 for high school students, for a total of about 67 in the school division. Now, to fully understand our current counseling dilemma, I'll put things in their proper context. The funding ratio changed from 1 to 500 to 1 for 375 for elementary, from 1 to 400 to 1 for 325 for middle school, and from 1 to 350 to 1 to 300 for high school. These are the first changes that have occurred in almost 30 years. Newport News already meets the new ratios where 50 school divisions had not. The changes increase the funding by providing state support to those SOQ positions. Newport News was paying for their current staffing levels without that state support. We should be able to do even better now that we have state support in this particular area. The problem, which is totally unique, is that the exact funding is a little up in the air due to funding provided by legislation not matching the ratios. This may not be finalized until the veto session in April. Remember, the Board of Education's ratio goals was 1 for 250. That ratio would put 114.5 counselors in our city. The difference would be 47.5 additional counselors. The original superintendent's budget added 6 counselors. The addition is less than 10% addition to our current staffing, and is only 5% of the Board of Education's ratio number. 6 counselors are needed. In fact, as a former full-time teacher, I would say they're vital. Our students are facing more challenges than you can even truly imagine. We must put kids first. We must fund our future. We must do what is necessary to face the mental health, trauma, gender, and opium issues society currently has. Don't get me started on the issue of social media. The threats to our children are huge. Our support to our children must also be huge. That was read. I thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. James Lovett, Jr.
My name is James Lovett, Jr., and I'm a resident of Newport News. Good evening to Superintendent Parker, Chairman Hunter, and other members of the Newport News School Board. I would like to thank you all for meeting with the Newport News City Council on March 12, 2019 to discuss plans to rebuild Huntington Middle School. A middle school is really, really needed in the deep southeast community at 3401 Orchard Avenue. And hopefully and possibly the rebuilding can start during the 100th year anniversary of the formerly known as Huntington High School. I would also pray that the Newport News City Council approve your request for funds to rebuild Huntington Middle School between the 1st of April and the 9th of April of 2019. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Miss Janie Bazemore.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Mr. Chairman and school board members and Mr. Superintendent. We have come a long way since we learned of plans to close Huntington Middle School. We thank the school board and our city council for coming to the realization and conclusion that Huntington Middle School must remain open for zoned middle school students in Southeast Newport News and accessible for students all over the city who desire to attend Huntington's magnet program. We must continue the progress we have made in planning the future of Huntington Middle School STEAM Academy. And we must not be placed in an unlimited holding pattern for plans for city projects that are wholly separate and apart from the school division's responsibility of educating our youth. Doing so will delay all stages of getting Huntington reopened within 2 years. Getting started on Huntington's plans 2 or 3 years from now is not acceptable because it will then be 4 or 5 years from now that the school will even be reopened. We have asked the city over and over to expedite funding for rebuilding Huntington so that it does not become a boarded up building without a future. Rebuilding Huntington must take priority over the city's plans for workforce development buildings, recreation centers, GED programs, or resource centers. True, these facilities and services are much needed in our area, but the education of our youth is more important. We would like to see this started within the next year because, as you know, in June 2020, the 8th graders that will be at Huntington at Heritage will move on to high school. And under your current plan, there will be no students entering Huntington in the fall of 2020 unless something is done to change that fact. Because of that, we are asking the school board to make a much needed change. We're asking that this board seriously consider rezoning Huntington's rising 6th graders back to Huntington at Heritage in the fall of 2020 so that Huntington remains physically active and not just a school on paper. Huntington becomes non-existent in 2020. So what would we as concerned citizens, the school board, and the school division have gained from our efforts? We all know that having the students at Heritage is not an ideal situation, but improperly maintaining Huntington was not an ideal situation either. That's what put us in the situation in the first place. We will continue to hound the city for funding without delay for other projects so that we can get about the business of rebuilding the school. The school is first and foremost. Huntington Middle School takes priority. Stay the course. Huntington shall rise again. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Mary Voss.
My name is Mary Voss. I'm a pre-K teacher for NNPS and a member of the Newport News Education Association Executive Board. Having 6 more school counselors in our school system would greatly benefit our students, teachers, and staff. 60% of NNPS students qualify for free or reduced lunch. Children living in poverty are more likely to have experienced trauma, making the mental health services and individualized attention offered by school counselors even more important. School counselors work in small groups or one-on-one with troubled students to teach them social skills and to help them with emotional self-regulation and impulse control. All useful skills in the classroom. More school counselors would also benefit the other students in our school system because addressing the social and emotional needs of the most disruptive students would help make NNPS safer for the rest of our students as well. Because those very challenging students, as much as we love them, sometimes they make our classrooms an unsafe environment, and at those times they need a caring professional to be able to help them calm down safely so that the rest of the class can get back to learning. There is a grassroots movement by public school teachers and staff across the country to advocate for better funding for our public schools, and this movement isn't going away anytime soon. Communities want to see their schools well funded, because better funded schools are the key to well-adjusted, successful citizens in the future. NNPS is currently ranked 9th out of 10 Hampton Roads localities in per pupil funding according to the Virginia Department of Education. Of course, I know this is not any of your faults, just stating a fact. Funding 6 additional school counselors with new money, this isn't something the school system should have to pay for, this is new money, is a great way to turn that statistic around. As we advocate for better school funding year after year, we will learn from our mistakes and refine our advocacy and lobbying. Going forward, the NNEA will do a lot of our advocacy in small groups with individual council members in a low-pressure environment so that they can get to know us and can hear personally from NNPS teachers and staff about why budget items like additional school guidance counselors are so vital for our school system and for our city's children. I touched base with the director of organizing for the VEA yesterday. She loves that we're advocating for additional school counselors. Her goal is to help us plan a long-term, multi-year effort to advocate for increased school funding here in Newport News. When we're advocating for NNPS students, teachers, and staff, we want to advocate for the budget we need, and we need these school counselors. Having worked in NNPS for 10 years, I'm often amazed at how many of our classroom teachers are actively considering leaving the classroom or leaving the profession altogether due to the intense stress of dealing with challenging students. We need more support. I'll say it again, we need more support. We love our students, and I can tell you personally, every year it's my most challenging students. I put this part at the end this time. My most, so I'm crying the whole speech. The most challenging students that we remember the best. It's because they need us more than the others. And so as much as they drive us crazy, they need us. We bond with them, but we need help. We need help to help them. These kids need and deserve more school counselors to help them learn how to use all of their amazing potential for good. We're ready to advocate for the budget that we need. Please let us do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tony White. I don't see him either. Mr. Tony White. Mr. Tony White. Okay. Reverend James Brown.
Good evening, Mr. Parker, Mr. Hunter, all the members of the school board. Good evening. It is my pleasure to be here tonight to stand up for the rebuilding of Huntington Middle School. We already know that the middle school is necessary. Since 2008, it seems that the city has been avoiding appropriating the funds and doing the necessary things in order to get the school back into the building mode. I don't know for sure at this point they have turned over the $2.8 million. But the architects can't work until they get paid. You know, we have a tentative plan, which looks good, but the intricate details of the plan are not done. We're not concerned about a plaza with a whole bunch of other things added to it. We're concerned about the middle school. As I'm standing here today, I'm dealing with children that will be heading to middle school to have all kinds of issues and problems. The school can't solve all the problems. The families have to solve them. But when you got a kid to come to school and he's broken, disruptive, and out of order, there's a reason for that. That's the reason why it's so important to have counselors in school to kind of get to the bottom of what's going on with the child before he ends up in the judicial system. We need to do that. We need to take more time out to look at what's going on in the background. No child is bad. Every child is open to education opposed to incarceration. So it's upon us as this school to push the city to do all they can to build a school, appropriate the money, so our children would have the best chances they have for a future. The future's in your hands. What the school board does, how they push, and we standing behind you 100%. You have done a great job thus far, and we're going to stand behind you to push the city into appropriating that money. Like I said again, I'm not concerned about no plaza or any of that. I'm concerned about a school where our kids can be educated. That's number one. And we'll move from there. And the school need to be built where there are trades and things like that. We talk about bringing jobs. You put trades back in the school, you produce jobs. You produce people that are equipped with skills and talents to do the work.
and not have to go outside of the state of Virginia to get people to come in and do our electrical, lay out blocks, and paint and all the rest of the stuff that they're doing. We can produce a place right here that can employ thousands of young men and women. Please continue to push forward. Let's get the school built.
Thank you. We have Shasta Rodriguez.
Good evening, Chairman Hunter, Dr. Parker, and all school board members. I'm a professional school counselor at Denby High School, and I'm here to support having the additional 6 counselors that's needed for our district. I have been serving at Denby High School for 6 years, and I can tell you I do agree with the mental health crisis that we do deal with weekly, and I do believe that we do need additional counselors so that we can support the need for our students, whether it's mental health or any other issues. Our caseloads are high, but there are times when it is difficult for us to handle different situations throughout the day. So 6 additional counselors, even more, will help us be able to do our job effectively.
Good evening. I am Dr. Dana Madison. My name is but I am one of 4 elementary school counselors that go between 2 schools in a week. So I go 1 school for 3 days, 1 week, 2, and vice versa. And having 6 more school counselors would definitely be a major benefit for our future leaders, because that's what we're working with, our future leaders. Coming across our thresholds every day, we have students that are hurting and in need of all the support that we can give, and we do our best with, with what we have. And we, at the elementary school levels, we have about 600 kids, at least 600 kids. So having 6 more counselors would definitely help us in doing what we need to do, and as it relates to helping our future leaders. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more cards? Are there any more cards? Are there any more cards? Are there being none? Thanks everyone for coming up, and we will move the agenda to item number 3, our consent agenda. We have minutes from our special meeting February 12th, 2019. Item 3.02, minutes from our work session February 19th, 2019. 3.03, minutes from our special meeting February 19th, 2019. 3.04, minutes from our regular meeting February 19th, 2019. 3.05, our financial reports, Child Nutrition Services, February 2019. The revenue and expense, February 2019. And 3.06, personnel report. You have those part of your packages. If you have any questions, can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved to accept the consent agenda as read by the chairman.
Seconded. You heard the motion and you heard the second. Time for the question. There being none, please call the roll.
Mr. Ely?
4.
Mr. Harris?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
4.
Ms. Simons?
4.
Mrs. Searles Law?
4.
Dr. Bess?
4.
Mr. Brown?
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. We'll move the agenda to action items number 4, 4.01, fiscal year 20 budget approval. Before we have that approval, Dr. Parker, are we going to have a presentation of any?
Yes, Mr. Yes, Mr. Chairman. This evening, we would like to introduce some additional information. As the board is aware, on February 19th, we presented a balanced proposed budget based on the governor's proposed budget, which there were changes made by the General Assembly budget, which passed during the subsequent early months of March. That budget now has created a deficit in our original proposal, about $1.1 million. So tonight's presentation, we went back to readjust our figures to reflect a balanced budget. As always, we are required to present the board with a balanced budget for consideration. Tonight we will do just that. Additionally, we would like to include some information on mental health awareness for the community and for this board, which may help you inform your decision making as well. So at this time, I'll call Ms. Rousseau up to begin that presentation.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. Mr. Hunter, members of the board, good evening. I'd like to start this evening with just a really brief recap of the revenue that is in Dr. Parker's budget. You know that we have $315.4 million budgeted for next year. That's a $10.6 million increase over this year's budget. That increase is coming from the state, $8.7 million, and a request of $2.3 million from the city. Our federal revenue is expected to be down $500,000 next year based on the fewer number of military connected kids, and our other revenue is up just $100,000. So that's our 10.6 or 3.5% increase in revenue for next year. And just a real brief overview of what what we have in the budget for next year, what that revenue will fund: a 2% salary increase for all employees. We are funding compression adjustments for teachers. The average teacher increase will be 3.1%, but their range of increases will be from 2.1 to 3.7%. We are funding experience adjustments for some of our support staff groups. We've shared that with you in the past. We are funding adjustments to our bus driver salary scales to make sure that our bus driver pay is competitive with other districts in the region. We are funding increased contributions to employer share of health care by $3 million. We are funding 15 new positions. 6 of those are ESL teachers, and 3 of those are ESL support staff to address our growing ELL population. 2 of them are licensed clinical social workers to help with mental health issues with our children. 2 are security officers at our elementary schools, and 2 are ITCs, or instructional technology coaches, at our high schools that have a computing device for each student. And then we are funding a number of technology and maintenance priorities that we've discussed with you several times. And as well, in this budget, we are including turnover and attrition totaling $5.3 million. What we have not done at this point in this budget is increase the number of counselors. So you know that the governor's budget did increase the funding for counselors. And at that point, when we were using the governor's budget for our revenue projection, we had increased the counselors by 6. At this point, to balance our budget, we have gone back to our number of counselors that we have in the budget for this year. You can see from this table that we have 77.5 counselors currently in our operating budget for this current year. You can see how they are allocated over each level. The SOQ requirements for next year are shown in the middle column. So you can see that this year we're 10 positions more than what the state is requiring us to do for next year. And so what the state does allow is, if we have met the funding requirements, the number of positions that are funded, we can allocate those to best meet our needs. So what we're proposing to do for next year is reallocate 2 of our secondary guidance counselors to the elementary level. That would allow us to have 2 full-time counselors at our 2 schools that have over 700 students. We'd have 1.5 counselors at our schools that have 600 students or more. And then we have 4 schools that we think have special needs that we think additional counseling support would be beneficial. So those 4 schools would also have 1.5 counselors. The state also did pass legislation that would require all counselors to spend at least 80% of their staff time on direct counseling of individual students or groups of students. So we are waiting for the state to define direct counseling for us, and at that point we'll know more about what they really expect, and we'll be able to align our counselors' work to that. Our school counselors are really part of a larger team of support for our students. That team includes school psychologists as well as school social workers. Those folks work under the leadership of Dr. Mitchell, and so she's now going to share with you what the responsibilities for each of those work groups are, as well as other support that we have for our students and at our secondary schools, and some plans that we have for elementary students next year. Dr. Mitchell.
Good afternoon. Good evening. Sorry. Good evening, Chairman Hunter, Vice Chair Brown, board members, and Dr. Parker. We all know it truly does take the entire community to surround our students with social emotional support that's required really to assist them with becoming well-balanced individuals. So doing this work daily are key personnel in our district, and that those key personnel do include our school counselors, our school social workers, and our school psychologists. And they do work, certainly some of their work crosses over, with each other, but they also are very uniquely trained. So based on an article that was written in collaboration between the presidents of each of their organizations, the president of the Virginia School Counselors Association, the president of the Virginia Academy of School Psychologists, and the president of Virginia Association of School Social Workers, they work together on an article, and what they share is that school counselors, of course, have a specialized knowledge of curriculum and instruction, and they help students to build academic and social emotional skills that are needed for a successful transition from pre-K to college and career. And they prepare our students to manage potential social, emotional, and academic challenges that they're going to face in life, which of course benefits the student, the parent, and the teachers. Regarding school psychologists, they specialize in analyzing complex student and school problems and selecting and implementing appropriate evidence-based interventions to improve outcomes at home and at school. And then the school social workers specialize in the assessment and oftentimes diagnosis and implementation of mental health interventions and models. And they specialize with linking families and community systems together that are, of course, essential in promoting student success. So please know, we recognize that even though that's in an article, that does not encompass the work of, by no means, of each and every one of them. We can never put on paper everything that they do. So we have some additional supports that help work with our students and work with our school counselors, our social workers, and our psychologists. So at the high school level, every high school has a college career specialist that helps work with students as well as with the high school counselors with getting them ready for college. We also have student support specialists in each high school that work with students along with the school counselors around social emotional development, around challenging behaviors and trauma situations that our students are involved in, as well as graduation coaches help support each one of the high schools. Now, district-wide, we do have a behavior specialist who works K through 12, and to date, and when we looked at her data, to date she has worked very closely with 29 of our schools to date. Principals call her, she goes in and provides support to teachers, provides support to students. As Ms. Rousseau indicated in the 2020 budget, we are looking to hire 2 licensed clinical social workers. What's important about hiring those social workers is they will provide direct service to students and families. They will not be engaged in any other activities other than direct support, and they will also be able to provide therapy to students. So as we move forward, even though I don't have this on the slide, I did want to share with you that with our current partnership with the Community Services Board, we currently have 48 therapeutic day treatment behavior counselors that are in our schools. And in addition to those 48 behavior counselors, we do have the support from CSB of 1 administrator, 1 treatment coordinator, and 8 clinical intervention specialists. So we have heard the concerns of the staff regarding their desire to really provide additional support for our students who are experiencing challenges. So we are really excited to share with the board as well as with the public that we are embarking on a new expanded partnership with the Hampton-Newport News Community Services Board beginning next school year, where the Community Services Board will have satellite offices in some of our elementary schools, initially providing outpatient therapy right there in the school. They will provide individual, group, and family therapy, and then expanding it to the following services that you see on the slide over time. We will have psychiatry, psychiatric nursing, psychological assessment and evaluation, and crisis intervention. Their staff will be licensed mental health care practitioners, such as licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, licensed clinical psychologists. And I want to just stop at this time just to acknowledge and thank Linda Askew, who is our Newport News supervisor for student support specialists, and our CSB liaison, Linda Hodge, who is the director of Youth and Family Services from CSB, and Nicole Jackson, who is our therapeutic day treatment administrator from CSB, for attending tonight. If you three would please stand, just to be recognized, for attending tonight to show their support for this expanded partnership. So at this point, I want to talk about our timeline. School board meeting and budget approval tonight. City manager presents the city budget to City Council March the 26th. School board submits budget to City Council April the 1st. City Council public hearing on the city budget April the 9th. Proposed joint work session with the Newport News City Council April the 9th. City Council public hearing on the city's budget April the 11th. And the City Council appropriates funds for our school operating budget on May the 14th. And that does conclude our presentation.
Okay. We have questions. Thank you very much.
You come up for questions.
We'll get questions. And then we'll start with, thank you, Ms. Rousseau. We do have some questions for you. We have Ms. Jones.
I just have two quick questions. So my first one was about 1.5 counselors. So is the half counselors that go between schools? Right. Okay. And my second question was actually about the CSB partnership. So I noticed that one of the bullets, it said psychological assessment plus evaluations, and I was just curious as to what that meant and whether or not that would be for, like, I guess all students, or students, I guess, like demonstrated some kind of need for one.
That is a wonderful question. So it could be a demonstrated need. School personnel could make a recommendation to the community, to talk with a parent and make a recommendation. Or parents will now be able to come in after having conversations with their school counselor, or maybe the social worker, or maybe the psychologist. They may have a conversation with the parent, indicating to the parent that they are concerned that there may be some mental health concerns that are mental health needs that are diagnosable, and then they would go through the evaluation process. For example, they could identify some of our students are having PTSD or some mood disorders, and so they would do the actual evaluation right there at school, and then the students would receive the therapy at school.
So I noticed you said diagnosable. So what about students who are assessed and maybe they don't have anything that's diagnosable, but they do have some need? Would they get helped as well?
They would get help. It may not necessarily be from Community Services Board. Right now they're receiving help from our school counselors. They're receiving help from our school social workers or our school psychologists. And then, of course, we hope to have 2 additional licensed clinical social workers on staff to be able to provide that as well.
Thank you both.
You're welcome.
Mr. Ely.
Thank you once again for that presentation. How many extra therapists will the CSB be providing to the school system?
It will actually depend on the number of students. So our students, the nice thing about this is students who are Medicaid eligible will be able to have access, okay. But also if you have another type of insurance, you'll be able to have access as well. So it really is based on the need of our students. They have indicated that they will hire whatever we need.
So that if the child doesn't have insurance for any reason, then they may not be eligible for CSB support?
Well, this is the beauty of it is if they aren't eligible for it, then our 2 licensed clinical social workers that are going to be hired under Newport News would be able to provide that support.
So basically all kids will be getting the support that they need as far as day treatment concerns.
Well, that is our goal. That is our goal. Between our school counselors, our social workers, our psychologists, our partnership with CSB.
And this is a step forward than what we previously have now.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. And the beauty of it, again, is parents get to come right to the school. So let's say that you have been identified as someone who could benefit. You've gone through the evaluation process. Your mother no longer has to get off from work and take you somewhere. Then you get to have that right there at your school. So you come to school. Your appointment might be at 9 o'clock. You're in class. 9 o'clock, you go for your therapy session, and then you go back to class.
I think that's really good. And the reason why I say that is I was at work the other day, and a parent was in a salon with me, and she was stating her child goes to a middle school, and she's creating behavior problems, and the parent just don't know what to do, what direction to go. She went to the behavioral health center. That's a 2-3 day process. Then it's like, I'm not getting any treatment for my child. And that parent was very frustrated. So I think this would be a definitely great step in the right direction to give those parents support, because they now they're able to come and get support from the CSB and to maybe get that diagnosis and that help for their child.
And the other thing, of course, also is they will do family counseling as well. So if there are some family systems, things going on, they can do that as well at the school.
And that's at the school?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yes, Ms. Rose Laws.
I'm just curious, are other districts utilizing the same model?
None in the Tidewater area now.
Okay.
Now, we do know of some in other parts of the country, but none in this area.
Thank you.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
Dr. Bess?
Okay, my question is not necessarily about the budget, but it's about the counselors. So for now, we're talking about taking 2 counselors and put them down to the elementary level. My question and my concern is, have you given some thought to taking counselors off the resource schedule? Because even if you get the additional 2 or whatever number of counselors, if they are on a resource schedule, they still won't be able to perform their job as it's designed to be performed. So have you given that some thought?
Yes, we have. As a matter of fact, Dr. Hines and I have had a lot of conversations, and I've been out the last couple of weeks meeting with elementary principals, and right now there are 7 schools that have that model. So we're looking at working with the staff, the principals, to restructure that for next year. Yes.
Thank you.
And just be mindful that the reason behind the resource schedule is to provide teachers at the elementary level the time for planning, collaborative planning. This would happen despite the budget, because legislation from the state was passed that 80% of counselors' time now has to be spent with direct supervision, direct interaction with students. So to do that, we will have to reevaluate the elementary resource schedule for school counselors, regardless of the budget. That's not a budget discussion, it's a state requirement discussion. So that would impact the amount of time at the elementary level in particular, where counselors are working directly with students and are accessible to students. But however, there are some kinks that we'll have to work out in terms of teacher planning time, and the importance of collaboration at the elementary level is something that we value, and we definitely want to continue to provide for our teachers.
Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Dr. Mitchell, for the report. Could you give us the background on how this relationship developed
with
CSB?
Well, we've worked with Community Services Board for the last couple of years with our therapeutic day treatment partnership. Okay. And so when Dr. Parker came on board, we had a conversation about the fact that Hampton Newport News Community Services Board is all the way in Hampton. And so for some of our parents who may be in need of those services, it is a challenge for them, either because they're working and they don't get off in time to get there, or they don't have the transportation. And so we just put our heads together to try to figure out how can we better serve our students. Started doing some research, recognized that there are some divisions, not here, but that had this service model. And it was an idea that Dr. Parker had brought to us, saying, is there a way that we can better serve our parents and our students where they don't have to travel so far? Okay. So because we already had an existing partnership with them, we thought we would approach them first to see if this was something that was doable.
Okay, good deal. Thanks.
Anyone else? Thank you for the report. So, board members who have before you, you've heard the report, you've heard the update on the budget, and the budget, proposed budget is before us. Ms. Simons.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion, since the school board has really done a lot of thinking about school counselors and the importance of school counselors, and we have been disappointed by the $1.1 million cut from the General Assembly. I would like to make a motion that we add back 2 counselors into our budget, placement to be determined by the superintendent. And I would like to have some discussion on that motion to see what my fellow board members think about that.
Okay. Very good. Before we get started, maybe Ms. Russo or Dr. Parker could tell us what additional costs.
I'd like to second that motion.
Okay. I think we're just going to pass this out just for part of our discussion.
Mr. Chairman, I'm passing out some information regarding the actual cost for increase. This original budget, this budget before you this evening did not include an addition of 6 counselors. Primarily, the information that was provided substantiates the effort to increase mental health support in our school division, but primarily because the motivation behind the 6 counselors in the original proposed budget was based on the governor's proposed budget, which provided the funding. And the reduction of the SOQ, which dipped below where we would meet the requirement, and we had to add, based on the governor's budget, we would have had to add 8 counselors to the elementary level. Our way of adjusting to that was to move 2 down to the elementary level and to add 6 to our current roster of counselors. The General Assembly budget does not have that requirement. We are well above the SOQ, as you see this evening, and the funding is not there, which in terms of fiscal responsibility, I had to present a budget this evening that was balanced with the loss of that revenue. However, I value the responsibilities of our school counselors. I think the state Commonwealth did a very responsible thing in requiring school divisions across the Commonwealth to limit the amount of time that school counselors are involved on collateral responsibilities. I think that is a move in the right direction and will add to improved service to our students. I applaud the Community Services Board for partnering with us, establishing a partnership that allows us to have greater access to their level of services that will provide great mental health services in our schools that we at a much higher rate than we had initially. But I also want to speak to how we would go about managing an additional 2 counselors. Roughly the cost of a counselor, salary and benefits, they're usually, counselors usually have a master's degree. When you account for benefits and salary would be roughly around $74,900, salary and benefits. So you just do the math, 2 additional counsels would be an investment of $150,000. In order to balance our budget, I would recommend, if this is the board's will this evening, that cost would be passed on to the city request. Currently, our request of the city is $2.3 million. So we would the actual request is $2,250,000 to be accurate, and we would add that cost onto the request of the city to balance this budget. Are there any further questions regarding the motivation or decision behind that? How we would handle the additional cost?
Well, you heard the motion and you heard the second. It's time for the question.
Mr. Chairman, at this time, can we like to amend the motion to include 6 counselors?
Well, at the time, we have a motion. You can do that after we have a second of the motion on the floor at the moment. So since there's a second, do you have to, actually you can do that after you do a second, I believe so. Yeah. So there's an amendment to the first motion on the board to amend the addition of 2 counselors and for recommendation of 6 counselors. Is that correct?
6 elementary school counselors.
So you heard the amendment to the original motion. Is there a second?
I just would like to urge the board, while of course adding counselors at the elementary school level is fantastic, I would also urge the board to not overlook the secondary levels. A lot of times students who are, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but students who are high performing and pushed to achieve at the lower ages, elementary school and middle school, often burn out in the high school levels. And a lot of times that's overlooked because by the time we get to high school, those students are expected to just continue to do what they're doing. They're not really seen. Their mental health isn't seen as where it needs to be. So I just urge the board not to overlook the mental health crisis at the high school level and to make sure that we're giving them the same consideration that we are the elementary school students. That's it.
So you heard the amended motion was to have to fund all 6 elementary school counselors. You heard the motion. Is there a second? Is there a second? Is there a second? There being none, that motion fails. And so we'll have to go back to the original motion, which stands on the board, which was to add 2 additional counselors to our budget. There was a first and there was a second. Again, we're back to the question.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have we or the administration discussed the shortage of counselors from the initial budget to now? City council, have we brought that up?
We initially, when
we decided to put it back in or whatever?
We gave the estimate of needs to the city council in January when that estimate of needs was presented to the school board, which indicated that we were developing a proposed budget on the based on the governor's projected budget, and a reduction in the SOQ requirement for school counselors. But that did not pass through the General Assembly. The city manager is aware of that. That we now have a deficit of $1.1 million from the original proposed budget that was presented to the school board on February 19th, and what the basis of that reduction involves. So that is, to my knowledge, the only communication we've had regarding our city officials and this budget until it's passed. But they are aware that the General Assembly budget did not match the governor's proposed budget.
Okay, and I got one last question. Will the CSB collaboration make up for the shortage? Is that possible, or how do you see that?
It's actually budget neutral. It's a budget. It's actually budget neutral.
But okay.
So it's providing additional services, bless them, at no additional charge.
Okay.
So that is a budget neutral partnership.
Any other questions? I would say that adding this additional approximately $150 to the budget, again, you only can spend that money once. And so once we add that to our budget, that becomes our cost of year in and year out. So we will pass this budget, adding this extra approximately $150,000 to the budget. We'll pass it on to the city council for approval. Typically, hopefully if we've got any luck, they'll approve that particular budget. If not, and then we'll have to come back and readjust our budget so that we present a balanced budget. So again, we've heard the motion, we heard the second. That was the question. To remind everyone.
I have a question.
Mr. Ely.
So if city council doesn't fund the $150,000 we need to provide school counselors, what will we do as a school district? Will we fund it ourselves, or will we out?
The question is really whether they'll fund the entire request. So the entire request with 2 additional counselors would be $2,399,898.
So say if they don't fund that amount, then what?
Then it is typically the school division's process to go back and revisit what we're trying to accomplish in that annual budget, and we'll have to scale back. Either we would have to pay for them out of our current operational dollars, or we would have to scale back the things we're attempting to accomplish in this year's budget.
Because listening to the guidance counselors and listening to people who show a great need and support that we really need those additional counselors in our budget, I would hate for if the city council doesn't fund us, we not able to provide at least 2 additional counselors to the school district. So it would be greatly appreciated if we could, because we don't know what the city council is going to do. Right. And we, listening to people out here in the audience, it's a great need that we need these additional counselors as support. I just want to make sure we still be able to have that additional support, whether city council funds it or not.
Well, it goes back to, do you have your clicker on you? I'll go to that last slide. I just want to make that one point. It goes back to what we presented at the last presentation for the board. If we go back and look at what we've paid for out of our operational dollars in over the past 10 years, this slide gives you a good indicator. That green slice right there is all we have to really do everything else outside of grants and federal and other special programs. Those dollars have decreased by $18 million, roughly around $18 million over the past 10 years. Now and even in that slice of green, some of those things are fixed costs. We're going to have to pay the light bill. We're going to have to pay gas. We're going to have to pay water. You're going to have to pay, the buses have to run. You have to pay, so there are things in that green that are fixed. So if we continue to move any of those items into compensation, salary, staffing, those are recurring costs. That slice continues to get smaller, and we really get to a point where we may have some operational issues with paying our bills. So it's incumbent on us when we look at added positions, when we look at compensation and benefits, we have to seek new revenue from either the state or the locality, the city, to support anything that we're doing outside of our current operational dollars. We can't continue to bite into an operational budget that's getting smaller and more restricted and more restricted. Creating additional positions restricts that because it moves it to salaries and benefits. Working on compensation and paying for it out of our current operational dollars restricts that and moves it to salaries and benefits. So it's incumbent on us to increase the request to the city when we have things that we need to accomplish that involves people and paying people. So I would dare say that if our complete request is not funded, it would be better to look at what we can accomplish, continue to work with the city to try to get the funding that we need to move our division forward, and to continue to work across the table so that they understand our priorities as well as we do. And I think that versus going back and saying we'll take more money out of the current operational budget to support that.
That additional support that we get from CSB, that would help out some, is that correct?
Yes, sir. It's going to help tremendously.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And as well, again, the mandate from the governor's budget saying that counselors have to do 80% counseling, and as opposed to that also will, a counselor who's out of her office for even 4 hours a week, that's 4 students that they didn't see. And multiply that over the number of weeks, that becomes kids to slip through the hole possibly. So hopefully that will satisfy some of this as well. So if there's we have one more question. Yes.
My comment would be that while 2 additional counselors is necessary, needed, and it's helpful, I would point out to all the members of the board in the last at least 5 years, this is the first time that we've had a discussion about having an increase in counselors. It has taken a considerable amount of effort and resources to get to the point of having a discussion about having additional counselors. So that's what I just would, the concern is striking while the iron's hot, meaning that I think that for those of you sitting up here, another opportunity to talk about increases in counselors is not necessarily forthcoming in future years. So we just don't want to let opportunities pass us by. We know, Chairman and I have been to presentations, we know that the recommended ratio is 1 to 250. We know that a lot of the reason why we have such a great graduation rate and such a low dropout rate is because of the number of counselors that we've invested in at the high school level, where we have additional counselors, we have graduation coaches, and additional counselors that have provided tremendous resources. We talk to other divisions, and we know that we in Newport News, that is something special that we have done and why we have one of the lowest dropout rates in the whole country and one of the highest graduation rates. And now is an opportunity to put more resources at the back end, which is at that elementary school level, so that we can really move our division forward and exceed it. I would just point out that in all our time on the board, this is the first time that we've ever had an opportunity to talk about additional counselors, and letting an opportunity like this pass us by, there may not be another one.
Dr. Bess.
I have a comment as well. With the additional, if it's passed, 2 counselors, then we have 2 that will be coming from the high school. That's 4. So that's close to 6. So we're getting there. So I think we're headed in the right direction, and with the help of Community Services Board, I think everybody is keenly aware that there's need out there, and we're going to continue to address the need.
Dr. Best, actually, with the governor's first proposal, it was that we needed 8, just for correction, and then so we were taking 2 from the middle, and then right now the motion that's on the board that had a second to do 2, so we got halfway there, with the proposal. Not necessarily we got closer to 6, we actually got just halfway there.
And I'm committed personally, I'm sure many of the board members are, to continue the conversation into the next budget.
I just think that as much as I understand numbers, and as Dr. Parker pointed out, that non-compensation number gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Those are instruments for students. Those are band uniforms. Those are referees we have to play for. Those are again lights we put on. Those are school books that we have to buy, and to continue to take money from that budget would be what I think would be irresponsible for this particular board. And so we have to put that burden on the city in order to supplement for that. So we heard the motion. There's no more question. To remind everyone the motion on the board is to increase the request from our city's budget to about $2.399,898 into the budget that Dr. Parker has presented for us. There being none, Ms. Buffalo, please call a roll.
4.
Mr. Harris?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
4.
Ms. Simons?
4.
Mrs. Searles Law?
4.
Dr. Best?
4.
Mr. Brown?
Against.
Motion carries 6 yay and 1 nay.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you again for the report, and we will be submitting that budget to City Council, hopefully for our complete approval. We'll move the action items to item 4.02, proposed city calendar, school calendar for next year. Again, you heard the report last meeting. It was part of your package. Can I get a motion for approval of the 2019-2020 school calendar?
So moved. So moved.
You heard the motion. Is a second?
Second.
You heard the second. Now you heard the motion and a second. Time for the question. There being none, Ms. Buffalo, please call a roll.
Mr. Ely?
4.
Mr. Harris?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
4.
Ms. Simons?
4.
Mrs. Searles Law?
4.
Dr. Best?
4.
Mr. Brown?
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
And again, item number 4.03, the VSBA Business Honor Roll. Again, that was part of your board package. Can we get a motion to approve that as well?
Motion to approve as stated by the chairman.
Second.
You heard the motion. You heard the second. Time for the question. There being none, Ms. Buffalo, please call a roll.
Mr. Ely?
4.
Mr. Harris?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
4.
Ms. Simons?
4.
Mrs. Searles Law?
4.
Dr. Best?
4.
Mr. Brown?
4.
Motion carries 7-0.
Well, we'll move the agenda on to our reports and information. First, we have up item number 5.01, our special education annual plan. And Dr. Mitchell, you're up? Dr. Mitchell, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening again, Chairman Hunter, Vice Chair Brown, school board members, and Dr. Parker. I am here this evening to provide information pertaining to the Division Special Education Annual Plan, Part B, flow-through application. Oftentimes we refer to it as the annual plan, however, it is an application. Tonight's presentation is an annual requirement to inform the board of the proposed spending for the funds that are allocated to us by the federal government that are based on the requirements that are outlined in the application. Local education agencies are required to submit this application each year pursuant to the federal provisions of the Individuals with Disabilities Act of 2004, as well as the state regulations that govern special education and related services for students with disabilities. Prior to the submission of the plan, the Virginia Department of Education requires that the local division review the plan with their local Special Education Advisory Committee and the school board for approval. An important part of this application includes verification of adherence to the list of assurances that have been outlined for us by the Department of Education. These assurances assist us as a division in maintaining state and federal compliance, and they include providing a free, appropriate public education for students with disabilities, providing an individualized education plan for each student, assuring that the students with disabilities are educated with their non-disabled peers for the maximum extent appropriate, and implementing policies and procedures that prevent misidentification of students with disabilities by race and ethnicity. So currently, we provide services to students in 13 different categories of disabilities, and the funding is based on how many students are actually receiving services with an IEP on December 1. So on December 1 for 2018, we were serving 3,719 students. And you can see the different disability categories that we serve our students in. So in addition to those assurances, the annual plan also requires that the division submit information on selected programs and expenditures. One such program is the local jail program, where services are in fact provided by 2 licensed special education teachers to students with disabilities who are currently incarcerated. Additionally, we are required to maintain the same level of state and local funding for students with disabilities as the previous year, and that is known as the maintenance of effort. So whatever amount of funding, state and local funding we spend one year, we must at least spend that same amount in this year. In collaboration with private school representatives, we meet with them and make a determination to identify the most appropriate use of set-aside funds for students with disabilities who are parentally placed in private schools. So if a parent places their child at, for example, Denby Baptist or Hampton Roads Academy, not to be confused with the special education private schools like Oyster Point Academy or East End or Rivermont. But if a parent selects to have their child attend one of the other private schools, then those private school representatives meet with us and say, how are we going to spend the set-aside money that the state gives Newport News Public Schools for those students? For the last 10 years, those schools have determined that speech language is the disability that they would like supported because of the direct link between literacy and student success. So we receive approximately, in the Part B part of the grant, approximately $6 million. And we are recommending that we continue to use the fund for personnel costs. And with the approximately $6 million, we are able to hire and maintain with benefits. You know, every time we get a raise, it comes out of this particular grant for 2 educational interpreters, 103 special education instructional assistants, 6 lead teachers, 1 parent resource center coordinator, 3 secretaries to help us process the paperwork, 6 special education teachers, 1 social worker, and 1 speech language pathologist. Now the other part of the grant is Part C, and you can see the amount is much less than the $6 million, but we are recommending that we continue to use it for personnel funds, which would help us with 2 teachers, 1 special education instructional assistant, 2 teachers that provide extended school year service. So in other words, in the summer, some students need additional support in the summer, and then a portion of the salary for a speech language pathologist, and then 2 more additional instructional assistants for the extended school year to make sure that our students do not slide back in the summer. So our next steps are a recommendation for the board to approve our recommended spending of this grant, and then submission to the Virginia Department of Education no later than May the 10th. So this does conclude my presentation, and I'm happy to entertain any questions you may have regarding the funding.
I have one, just one.
Okay.
I'm just curious, how long have we had this grant?
For as long as IDEA has been in place, so for as long as we've had students with disabilities.
Okay, so
Yes.
we've been.
So it's a, yes.
Okay, great. Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. We're going to do some housekeeping just for clarity, and I think it's time to do it. On our last motion that was passed about the budget, I believe when I stated that motion, I actually put a number in, and maybe it's been easier for me to mention the motion just adding 2 counselors on the submitted approval as opposed to giving a number. And just for the sake of good record keeping, I believe that can we amend that? Is that correct? Can we get a motion to amend?
Well, yeah, the question was whether or not the motion was to amend the budget with 2 additional counselors, or to adopt the budget, including two additional counselors, with adopt an amended budget, or simply to amend the budget. And so we just need to find out from Ms. Buffalo.
2 additional to the budget.
Okay.
I don't have amended.
Okay. Well, that would be
Right.
amending the budget, but
Right.
the question is, was the budget passed? Because the motion should have been to pass an amended budget to include 2 additional counselors.
Yes.
And so if that was the motion, then the budget has been passed.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Right. I have 2 additional, I just have 2, approve
amend
the
the
budget
budget.
with 2 additional counselors.
Okay. Then there would need to be, if you want, that was a motion to amend the budget, and you all voted to amend the budget.
Okay.
Now there needs to be a motion to pass the amended budget.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, thank you for the clarity, and it's good to have good housekeeping. And so, again, you heard that. Can we get a motion for the to pass the amended budget?
So we're trying to, making a motion, just so it's perfect, I would like to make a motion to approve the amended budget.
Yes.
Okay.
And I second that.
So you heard the motion and you heard the second. Time for the question. There being none, Ms. Buffalo, please.
And this is to approve the amended budget. Mr. Ely?
4.
Mr. Harris?
4.
Mr. Hunter?
4.
Ms. Simons?
4.
Mrs. Searles Law?
4.
Dr. Best?
4.
Mr. Brown?
Against.
Motion passes 6 yea, 1 nay.
I wasn't gonna change my mind.
Okay. Well, yeah, we give you an opportunity. Always give opportunities. We're gonna move the agenda on, and then next we have. I lost my computer too real quick. Item number 5.02, Huntington site recommendations. I'm quite sure our guests that therefore Huntington would love to hear this particular report. And Dr. Parker, you will lead us in this.
Thank you, and I'm assuming I have a mystery clicker. Okay, good. All right. Chairman Hunter, Vice Chairman Brown, and members of the board. School Board Resolution 18-03 was passed by the school board on December 17, 2017, and required the superintendent to analyze the future need for and uses of the Huntington Middle School site and buildings. The resolution also required the superintendent to report his findings to the school board by March of this year. This evening, I would like to ensure compliance with the board resolution by providing a formal update and recommendation for Huntington Middle School. We began this process by contracting with Grimm & Parker Architects and Cropper GIS to conduct a demographic analysis of the Huntington attendance zone and a feasibility study of the design, location, cost, and program of a new middle school. A demographic analysis of Cropper GIS determined that based on current and projected enrollment data, if the transfer activity in and out of this area remains the same, and there is not a significant amount of excess school capacity in the southern region around Huntington Middle School, their data suggested a need to rebuild a middle school for at least 600 to 700 students. We believe that the demographic report would provide the clearest justification for whether to rebuild a Huntington Middle School. The methodology for the study met or exceeded standard methods for population forecasting by incorporating census data, such as cohort age, populations, and live births. Additionally, trends in middle school attendance throughout the city were studied to determine and forecast the future enrollment of our existing middle schools based on projected increases in the city population. The feasibility study was done by Grimm & Parker Architects to develop a conceptual design for a new school on the existing site to determine if the site could support a new school. It was determined that rebuilding a middle school on the existing site for 600 to 700 students could be done. A conceptual design for a new school was developed based on the input of community stakeholders and Newport News Public School staff. Indicative pricing was developed to form the basis of future budget requests. Preliminary construction cost estimates were developed based on a 2020 construction date. That estimate was $45.5 billion with an additional $4.5 million estimated for furniture, fixtures, equipment, and technology. The results of these studies were reported to the school board and city council in a joint meeting on November 20th, 2018. There was an additional joint meeting held on January 22nd, 2019. The design fees for the new Huntington Middle School were requested in the school board's FY 2019 capital improvement budget in the amount of $2.8 million. At the joint meeting on January 22nd, it was communicated that before the city would appropriate these funds, they would like to consider an expanded project that would include the area where Huntington Middle School is currently located, as well as the city's existing site for Doris Miller Community Center, for the Doris Miller Community Center building and fields. A timeline for this work is being developed with the city, and we anticipate that a plan will be established that will include a new community facility as well as a new Huntington Middle School. The school board additionally requested $50 million in the FY20 capital improvement budget for the construction of a new Huntington Middle School. To date, no action has been taken on the city council on the FY20 through 24 CIP budget. And this gets us to my recommendation, which is to continue with future dialogue and communication with our city officials and leadership to establish a construction timeline and potential opening date for a new Huntington Middle School. What we have accomplished thus far is obtaining a commitment from the city to move this project forward. While there are some challenges that have been identified, such as funding, at this time I do not have any reason to indicate that this project will not move forward in the foreseeable future. I would like to thank the residents of the Huntington community, the Huntington alumni, our school leadership, and this board for getting us to where we are today. I will, however, quote Mr. Brown by reminding us all to remain vigilant and active throughout this process. And that concludes my remarks and recommendation, Mr. Chairman. I'll be happy to entertain any questions.
Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have
Mr. Brown?
2 questions. If I understand correctly, the $2.8 million that was part of our capital budget in the previous year has not been appropriated at this time.
Yes, sir. And we did mention at the January 22nd meeting that they would like to be a part of the design process for the entire campus, not necessarily the middle school, but the entire campus, and they would like to look at a total price for doing that project versus just the $2.8 million.
And so at this time, we do not have any funds to hire an architecture firm to make any drawings of Huntington or do any plans. And to this point, we have not received any funding for
Yes,
Huntington Middle School at all.
Correct.
Okay.
Question. Dr. Bess?
My question is regarding the timeline. from what I understand, there is no timeline. Is that correct?
At this current time, there is not a timeline. That will be the first order of business, is to establish a timeline for meetings and the planning schedule, in addition to a funding schedule for the project. But at this time, we do not have that data or that information from the city.
And
go ahead.
And that was a concern that I expressed at that particular meeting, because when you don't have a timeline, there's not any urgency. So there are no deadlines to meet. There are no goals to achieve. There's kind of nothing. So your goal is for our next
proposed joint meeting date is for April 9th. I'm still waiting on confirmation from the city manager. I will meet with her on Monday, March 25th, to firm up the date for the next joint meeting. At that time, we'll have 2 items on that agenda for that joint meeting, unless the board has any other wishes for spending that time with the city council. One will be the Huntington plan for development, and the other piece will be our operational budget. But we are trying to firm up our meeting dates with the city so we can get them to the table as soon as possible, and start firming out, creating a firm schedule. The city manager did note that they were in the throes of the CNI project and other major projects in the February-March timeframe, and that now that those items have passed, we're hoping that we can get to the table as soon as possible.
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
One other follow-up question, which is, given that the city council voted last year to appropriate $2.8 million in their CIP budget for the architecture of Huntington, isn't there a deadline for the appropriation, and are we coming close to that deadline?
I will rely on the city attorney, but I believe I was told that an appropriated budget does not necessarily require that they have to allocate the funds. Did I say that the right way?
That's right.
So,
That's right.
Okay, so even when they vote, there is no guarantee that money is forthcoming.
Yes.
That's the way I'm interpreting it.
That's correct.
That is correct.
Mr. Harris?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a board, I think we really need to have an internal discussion amongst ourselves on what is our deadline. How do the full board move together on a proposed plan to the city? Because I almost feel like we're being held hostage at this moment, and I sort of don't like that. So I would like the board members, you can individually think about it yourself or whatever the case may be. But if we're not speaking as one voice, then these are the things that happen. You get prolonged. I mean, I work in this business. I understand appropriations, and I do construction for a living. The bottom line is, if there's no money on the table, okay, this thing can go on and on forever. And I feel as though we're being held hostage. Now, if that's the case, then I have a major issue with that. Okay, I have an issue with it because I don't think it was brought forward in a straightforward manner. I don't want to make any assumptions, but the land belongs to us. We asked for a school. A school is required. It's required for the city. I don't hear certain partners going to the city council talking about, hey, guess what? We need a school there because it would cut down on crime. I mean, I think that would be a good partner to have speaking on our behalf, but we don't hear that. We don't see that. Okay, so the bottom line is that we need to have some real discussions. Sometimes those discussions hurt, but guess what? That's the reason we're in this business. That's the reason we pay people a lot of money, and that's the reason we go out and ask for votes. Because me personally, I am actually sort of fed up with all the conversation. I'm very patient, but I've heard this story before you got here, Dr. Parker, and I hope that we've even had different board members, and I don't want them to fall asleep being lulled by the same conversation. Okay? So, Mr. Chairman, I seriously hope that we, as a board, somehow, some way, have these tough discussions amongst ourselves, and so at the end of the day, either we execute and fail as one, or we execute and succeed as one. But the bottom line is, we as a board is going to have to lay down a marker, and that's just the way it is. I mean, so if we're afraid of not getting a project or someone is holding us hostage, well, if you don't let us have this, you don't let us have that, we're not going to give you any money. Well, guess what? You know, there's something called the law. I think we can use judicial action to try to speed this thing forward. Am I correct?
Well, let me just say, and I want to make a slight correction because we have terms of art that are kind of
Okay,
thrown around,
got you.
but-
I understand.
But no, I'm not talking about something you
Right.
said. I'm just talking about actually something that I said, and that the city council approves the capital budget,
Right.
but then they must appropriate the funds, and that's
Correct.
when the funds become available
Correct.
to us once they're appropriated. They don't have to appropriate
There you go.
what's been approved.
Correct. Okay,
you,
that's
ma'am.
understandable.
I saw her shaking her head.
Okay, yeah, sure. I mean, yeah. Okay, not a problem. I just want to make sure, you know, that I feel comfortable with the board moving forward with whatever decision or whatever position we take. And I think we need to take that as a board because if you are truly committed to something, you must take the chance. And the chance is, I mean, obviously people have already proven whether they support the board or not. The CSB, for instance. Okay, it's my first time hearing that. I think it's wonderful. That's the reason I asked what was the background on that. Because obviously someone communicated with each other and someone said, well, guess what? We need to help the school division out. So I'm trying to figure out why don't the city council feel the same way about their school division? It is their school division also.
I think.
So
and
I'm finished with that, Mr. Chairman. That would be the last thing I would say about that. But I'm not feeling good about this.
Mr. Harris, as your chair, we will take that duly noted. But I will say, we closed that school down less than a year ago, okay? And as I've worked in construction and things of that sort to get a big plan like this. I believe that we're moving pretty fast, and not as fast as we would like to get the agreement, but I believe we've got them to agree that the new school is done. At the CNI, for those who were there, you know, they committed to, again, to HUD that there was money and they was going to build on Huntington. You're correct, to both you and Dr. Best, that our next step is to get a timeline, because once you get a timeline, and then you can't move if you don't have a timeline. So I think the next thing we need to do in our collaborative meetings is to kind of set, as Dr. Parker says, let's sit down with them and let's find a timeline. Once you have a timeline, then we can actually look at the picture. If it's 2022 that the school is going to be opened up, even if it's 2023, at least we know a date, and then we can work our way back to getting this done. I do believe that we will build a Huntington. I hear you. I know the frustration is there because that's what's happening, and that has been the culture. But we're trying to change the culture of this particular relationship we have with the city council. So before I completely throw them underneath the counter, we did get them to commit in public that they were going to build a new Huntington. And so now, you know, we have to get 14 people together all at one time, and that's logistics, you know. It takes long, you know, we have meetings, they have meetings, and so we've got to find when the majority of us can come together. We met a couple weeks ago, as Dr. Parker said, our tentative date, we're ready to go, but, you know, the city council has to be at the table as well. And so we hear you, our next 2 items on that agenda, you know, we're going to talk about our operating budget, and we're going to talk about Huntington timeline. That's it. That's the only thing that this school board is coming to the board to find out Huntington and our operation budget. So I ask that we also be patient because it is up front. I have heard the city manager mention it a couple weeks ago at the CNI, and so then I doubt if they will go back on HUD, because HUD said, hey, where's that school that you're going to build? They asked you, where's the money and what has been appropriated? And so in order to complete that CNI downtown, that school is a part of it. And so that's something you may not know, but that gives us another little, you know, nugget in our pocket, if you want to say. But you're correct. We do need to set a timeline so that we can move the process forward.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman, I just would offer the board and offer as acknowledgement that many board members have reached out across the table to their counterparts on City Council, and I definitely appreciate that, and I ask that you continue to do so, in addition to supporting the operational budget, but also supporting the development of an established timeline and the funding for Huntington Middle School. So, and thank you for all you have done so far.
Right. I
know conversations have taken place behind the scenes, so thank you.
So again, Mr. Harris, thank you, and Dr. Pitt, for your vigilance. You'll keep us on the right track, and we will take you. And if we had to have our own self aboard to go in there with a plan, if that's what's needed, and it may be what's needed, I think we need to do that ourselves. Okay. Any other questions on Huntington? Okay. We will move on your agenda, 5.03, the attendance report, 5.04, the membership report, 5.05, the construction report. Those were also a part of your package. If there's no questions on those, we'll move on to item number 5.06, comments from our superintendent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I tried to make an effort to shorten these remarks, but there's so much going on in Newport News that you can't do it in 6 pages or less, right? All right, so thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you may recall, in November, I delivered my inaugural State of the Schools address and shared some of my initial entry plan findings. I'm happy to report that on last Friday, I released the formal post-entry report to the community. I invite our staff, students, and community to read the report, which identifies and celebrates the great work taking place in our school division and communicates my vision of ensuring the future success of students and families we serve. I also would like to acknowledge my senior leadership team, the Community Relations Department, and many of our stakeholders who supported this report. The post-entry report is posted on our website, and copies will be available at all schools and offices later in the week. We started also this month by celebrating Read Across America Week. I had a wonderful opportunity to read to a class at Jenkins Elementary School. It was a wonderful opportunity. It was on my birthday, and the kids sung happy birthday to me. And that was just a good experience and a good way to spend your birthday. Also, Mega Genesis, the College and Career Expo, sponsored by, in collaboration with Newport News Public Schools and the Men of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, was held this past Saturday at Woodside High School. We had over more than 500 people in attendance at that event. I think Ms. Lisa Searle, Mr. Searle's Law was there with me to support that event, and Mr. Hunter came on through. It was a good event, and we're glad to have that sponsorship by the Alphas. Students were able to meet recruiters from local colleges and universities and attend numerous workshops. And we also had Dr. Makola Abdullah, the president of Virginia State University, as a keynote speaker. Dozens of Newport News students also participated in the Tidewater Science and Engineering Fair at Old Dominion University on Saturday. 2 of our middle school students earned awards of excellence in their junior divisions. And 5 students earned first place in their categories and qualified for the state science fair. Congratulations to all of our future scientists and engineers. Our students also fared well at the Tidewater Region Odyssey of the Mind tournament on Saturday. We had 20 teams competing this weekend, and 10 of our teams placed in the top 5 in their respective divisions. 3 teams, 2 Woodside teams and a team from BT Washington, earned first place and will advance to compete in the Odyssey of the Mind state finals in Manassas, Virginia on April 6th. This is a busy time of year. We also have coming up our Service Awards Banquet on Thursday. We look forward to honoring our employees who with 25 or more years in our school division at that event. And also on Thursday, hundreds of our high school schools will participate in the Youth Career Expo at the Hampton Roads Convention Center. And keeping the activities going, our Employee Wellness Expo will be held this Saturday at Heritage High School from 9 a.m. to noon. And employees and families may attend and learn more about health and fitness. We also are hosting a family festival on Saturday, March 23rd from 10 to 2 at Discovery STEM Academy. Elementary students and their families may participate in numerous fun and educational activities stations, and receive information about our curriculum and strategies to increase academic success. And the month's not over. On Tuesday, March 26th from 5 to 8:30, the citywide SEA will host a Live Well Student Wellness Expo at Minchville High School. I think this is the first time. All right, all students and their parents are encouraged to attend to learn more about healthy and active lifestyles. And I would like to remind everyone that Friday, March 29th is a half day for students, and April 1st through 5th is spring break. All schools and offices will be closed, and I wish everyone a happy and safe spring break. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes my remarks.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. At this time of our meeting, we have an opportunity again to hear from our audience, and I do believe I do have one card. Reverend James Brown, please come forward again. Remind you again that when you have 3 minutes, and when you see the yellow, you have 30 seconds. And
I'll try to stay on course. I'm Reverend James Brown, 46 Whetstone Drive, Hampton, Virginia, longtime resident of Newport News. While I commend this council on your efforts, I have a problem with the city. Since 2008, the city of Newport News has known that Huntington needed repairs and the school was deteriorating. Systematically, over a period of 10 years, they let it go to waste. I don't believe they have any intentions on building the school back. If they did, within the last 5 or 6 years, they would have done something. They built a new police station. They built a veterinary hospital for dogs and cats. They built the tech center. They did joint ventures with Jim's Market. They did a failing operation with the Newport News Williamsburg Airport. All this money in the time that they didn't put one dime towards rebuilding Huntington Middle School. You can be optimistic. I believe in facts. And the facts are the city of Newport News has not put forth any effort toward rebuilding Huntington Middle School. You can wishful think all you want to. As a construction worker for over 40 years, I know that if they don't have the $50 million to put forth now, how are they going to put forth $100 million to do all the other things they're doing? This is a stalling tactic. Cost of building is going up every day. Every day the cost is going up. Materials, concrete, masonry, steel are all going up. $50 million right now is a gift. That's a good amount of money to get the school built. But if we keep going up, it's going to cost us more than $60 million just to build a school. Then the city will have an excuse. They don't have the funding. They find funding for everything else. They have found funding for everything else. Why is it that when it comes down to the education of our kids, and the nation is suffering right now when it comes down to education, everywhere you look, education money is being cut. Have we reached the point where we don't need to be educated anymore? Have we? I don't think so. Without education, our children will suffer. We were talking earlier tonight about the detention homes that are being built. $12,000 a year approximately to educate a kid, $60,000 a year to house somebody in a detention center. Which one do you prefer? Let's not let the city get away with stalling any longer. They are stalling. School need to be built.
Are there any more cards? Are there any more cards? Are there any more cards? There being none, we will move the agenda. And this time we will have matters of the school board. And first we have up Ms. Jones.
Good evening. So I'll try to keep my comments brief. Just want to highlight, the students have been really busy this past month, and with this marking period. As you've seen, the awards from all of the students who made states both in athletics and in music. Also, SAGE, the Superintendent's Advisory Group on Education, did phenomenal work working with the Rights and Responsibilities Handbook. We broke out into teams and we gave our feedback from a student's perspective on recommended changes and how we feel about the handbook. Also like to highlight the Student Wellness Expo, as Dr. Parker did earlier, with citywide SCA happening for the first time Tuesday, March 26th at Menchville High School from 5 to 8:30. Be there if you can. It's going to be amazing. I'd also on a more serious note, just like to, again, ask for the board to continue to keep the discussion alive about mental health in students. It's really something it's really overlooked, and it's becoming a problem, especially in today's day and age where mental health is taking it looks different than what a lot of adults and a lot of trained professionals are used to, because the climate that our students are, and by our students, I mean my generation and the younger ones are being raised in, looks so different from the climate where a lot of these trainings and education happen. So please remain vigilant with the rest of the discussions this year and in future discussions about mental health in all students in elementary through the high school levels. And with that, I close my comments.
Thank you. Dr. Bess.
Good evening. I would like to thank all the speakers and presenters for this afternoon. Always very informative, and it's good to know what the community is thinking. I had an opportunity to attend the Bloom STEM Day 2 at Huntington Ingalls last Friday, and our school board student representative, Ms. Maria Jones, and also Dr. Felicia Barnett were the two of the speakers, very dynamic speakers, very motivating for the young ladies. Every time I attend one of those events, I'm just inspired, and I love to talk with the young ladies that are thinking about pursuing STEM careers. They are really, really excited about it. They can articulate what their plan is, and so it's just a very worthwhile project, and I just want everyone to know. I am pleased with the direction, like Ms. Jones said, that we're moving in as far as addressing the mental health, the psychological needs of our students, because as I stated at the last meeting, if they're not ready to learn, if they're not in a state where they're ready to receive instruction, then all of our work will be in vain. So I think we're headed in the right direction with additional counselors, with the partnership with Community Services Board. Those type of things are exciting for me. As far as Huntington, we'll just continue to fight for Huntington. We're going to do what we have to do. So we just continue that, and I will continue to ask the questions, and I'll continue to work with this board so that we can do everything in our powers to get that done. I would like to commend all the staff and the teachers that are on the front line, and I'm just encouraging you to hold on. It's a little less than 2 weeks before spring break, and we know this is one of the toughest times of the year, so just hold the line. Thank you.
Hold the line.
Thank you, Dr. Bess. Mr. Harris.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also like to thank all the teachers and administrators. You all have been doing a wonderful job. I hear it a lot in the community. Yes, it is a different tone. So I hear it a lot when I go to churches and things of this nature. People are not as hostile, toward, our kids and the education system. So I'm sure has a lot to do with the leadership of the superintendent. For me, I just want to continue to talk to my board members and just make sure that we stay vigilant of exactly what is going on in the city, the climate of the city, and it eventually comes down to each individual, understanding what your tolerance level is, and if we are really serious about accomplishing something that should be there. There's some things you don't have to ask for. They are, a right. So you speak differently, you act differently, you approach things differently. Okay, it is something that we also supposed to have. We need it there, and our kids need it, our community need it, in that location. So just stay vigilant, and I just ask that you be prepared to, get uncomfortable to make sure we get things done. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Mrs. Simons.
I want to thank the administration for all their hard work on the budget and providing us with these numbers for how much the budget would increase with the different counselors and working with us, so thank you. I have been very proud of our students. I had the chance to attend a FIRST robotics competition in Richmond, Virginia, where our Heritage High School team and our team from New Horizons Career and Technical Center was there competing, Vanessa Knights. And I just want to congratulate all the students who are competing in robotics competitions and also the Tidewater Science Fair. I think these are really important opportunities for our students to show what they know and earn awards. And I also have to give a shout out to teachers, because I know that some of these robotics teams would not happen if it weren't for the teacher coach who is there with these teams after school every day, giving up their own time. And I especially know that is true of the Heritage High School robotics coaches. So I'm really grateful to them. As for Huntington, I fully support this project, and I have been in touch with the city council counterparts for the Central District. I also had a chance to talk to them to advocate for our budget request and the school counselors. I have told them that we were let down by the budget that we got from the state, and that this is an opportunity for them to help us out and make it right. And I think the City Council is very interested in helping us with this budget. I think they understand that teachers need all that wraparound support from counselors and security officers and behavior specialists and the ESL teachers that are going to help them with their English language learning students. So I think there's a lot to like in this budget. I think that the City Council is really going to like the budget as well, and I think that we can all go out proud and ask them for their support for this budget. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simons. Mr. Ely.
Thank you. I just want to start off by saying I appreciate all the reports that we heard today. Was very good, especially with the mental health piece. That's something dear to me that I want to make sure that we do have the proper help that we need to support our children. And it was glad to learn tonight that we have CSB providing additional services for us to help our youth. Also, with Huntington Middle School, Marvin, you woke me up a little bit, even more. We definitely have to continue that fight with Huntington Middle School. With talking with my counterparts with the East End City Council, that's a concern of theirs as well. I talked with Tina last week, and she said she's definitely for Huntington. She wants to support Huntington, and let's make it happen. It's enough going back and forth. Let's appropriate the funds, and let's get Huntington built. And I definitely talked to her, and she's kind of over it. She's ready for it to happen. She's ready for the school to, start being built. And like everyone said, we need it in our community. We need a Huntington Middle School, and we want to make sure. I know the city have big plans for more community centers, things of that nature, but I want to see our school built first, and that's our first priority, is our school, our education for our children. So I'm going to continue to fight with the school board and the Huntington alumni to make sure we get a Huntington built, and not just say we're going to get it built. When we're going to get it built? What's the timeline? We don't have time to keep playing these games, or we're going to build it. Okay, that could be 10 years from now. We want to know we're going to build this school in 2020. We're going to start. So definitely it's going to take the efforts of the school board, continue to talk with our city council counterparts, as well as it's going to take the community. We can't do it alone as school board members. It's going to take pressure from the community. And I commend y'all coming down to city council and school board for the last year. That's a lot of time out of your day to come to advocate for something that you believe in. So I definitely commend y'all on your efforts, because if y'all didn't show the amount of support that y'all do, I don't know if the city council would even agree to do it. Y'all came out, y'all showed out, and y'all definitely advocating for what you want. So I commend you 1,000,000% on what y'all are doing, because you're taking a lot of time out of your day, and you shouldn't have to do this. This should be something that the city want to do. Why do we have to beg y'all and go back and forth to build a school? And if we don't have the money now, God forbid, are we going to have the money 10 years from now? You walk in the mall, stores are closing, stores are closing, stores are closing. That's tax revenue dollars is going down. So if we got the tax revenue dollars now, and you have all these stores closing, what we're going to do when it comes time to build a workout school? Storefronts are closing left and right. And that's huge tax revenue to the city. So it concerns me, like, what are we going to do as a city to be more progressive? And it's something we have to do to work together to make sure we have the funding, not just for Huntington, but other schools that are going through the same crisis that Huntington is going through. On another note, this weekend, we're partnering with over 20 different organizations. We're doing the Celebrity Stop the Violence basketball game again this year at Heritage. Last year, we had over 1,500 people in attendance, and we was at capacity 30 minutes after we opened. So make sure that you're there on time. Doors open at 1:30. We have the U.S. Air Force involved. We have all NAACP, a lot of community groups that are involved in making this event happen. And what better day to be today to spend my birthday at the school board meeting. So I'm going to wrap up because my family is texting me now. We're here waiting to sing happy birthday. So happy birthday, John.
Thank you, Mr. Ely. Ms. Searles Laws.
Happy birthday, John. I'm going to start with Huntington. We need to do the timeline. It's always it's a starting point, and if we go with that timeline, then they can tweak it, and they can tell us we're ridiculous, and they will need to tell that to us, to our face. So, I got the fire under me this evening. Thank you, thank you. About our budget, this is my first budget we've done. I am amazed by the process. I also understand that with our new leadership, this process has ramped up a bit. We've had the opportunity for the community to have input, for teachers to have input. This is what it's about. It's hard work, but I am 100% happy of the budget that we're going to be presenting to City Council. Sometimes when you present something, you can say, well, I could let that go, or I'd like that more than the other. I really believe that this budget we're going to present to them is something that they realize that they need to fund. Our efforts tonight demonstrate a commitment to the need to our students. When you get the opportunity to see that money is taken away, like from the General Assembly, you're forced to make some hard decisions. And we could have easily made the decision that that money totally correlated with getting counselors or putting counselors in the budget. And I'm really proud of us that we did not remove them from the budget. I'm also very excited about the CSB. This relationship, sometimes when the going gets tough, that's when we start getting creative. And for us to explore that relationship further, that's a win for us. And I'm thinking maybe we can be the gold standard in this region if we can make this relationship really work for us. I think that's all for me for tonight.
Well, thank you very much. Mr. Vice Chair, Mr. Brown.
Well, I'm going to say happy birthday to Mr. John Ely as well. Happy birthday, and I believe, Chairman, it's your birthday is at the end of this week as well. So happy birthday to the chairman also. And this evening, we did, I believe, pass a strong budget. Of course, there are always things that you want in the budget. There are things that you fight for. I think it would be no surprise to anyone that hopefully it's no surprise or shock to anyone that I wanted those counselors, and it'll make no apologies for fighting hard for them. I can't, I campaigned on that. I promised people that I would do that, and so I will continue. I did that, and I'll continue to do that. I just reflect tonight. It is great with the additional counselors that we are going to have, and I look at the 4 that we didn't get that I hope we do get in the following year. I think about at 1 to 250, there's at least 1,000 children who could have been helped by those additional counselors. And if it's a good idea now, then if it's a good idea and it's going to help now, then why not now? And as I always say, you have to create the budget, ask for what you need, and not for the budget that you think is going to necessarily pass. And so I'll just continue to be an advocate for that. I was an advocate for it when we could. I believe I could see the issues that we were having in our capital side, and that we needed to ask for additional money. And unfortunately, we got to a point where we didn't have a sufficient amount of money to maintain our buildings. So I will continue to just be an advocate for ask for what is needed, because it is our responsibility, and there's no going back once bad things happen. We are in a day and age now with the internet and social media that kids are in greater need of counseling and greater need of mental health. The social media, internet, it makes kids feel more isolated, a lot more depressed. Experienced that in my own household, so I know that firsthand that today's day and age, it is different, and kids do need a lot of intervention and a lot of help in order to be successful. And like I mentioned earlier tonight, we've seen the outcomes, the positive outcomes from having a sufficient number. Where we were at close to 1 to 250, I believe we're at 1 to 300 at our high schools is where we have our record graduation rates. So I became a fan of counseling, not because people know that I'm not emotional per se, but I do see the numbers. I see the studies of the National Association. I've seen the data that shows that it is efficacious. It's dollars well spent. That having that ratio, that 1 to 250, that's what gets your reading, your literacy scores up, gets your graduation rates up, helps to stabilize families, all kinds of helpful things that it does do. So I'll just continue to be an advocate for that, and I'm going to hold all you to it that this won't be the last conversation we have about counselors, and next year we will be back adding more counselors. So I heard you, and I'm gonna play the tape back to you and share it with you going forward. I'm just in terms of me being practical on Huntington. I think there are practical steps, Mr. Chairman and members of the board, that we could take. As I've mentioned in previous months, I do think it's time for us to have a resolution that sets a date certain, sets a timeline of our own. We did pass a budget. We are a body under the Virginia Constitution. We held a budget, we passed a budget, voted on it, and that timeline has Huntington in the first year. I believe that we should present that timeline. We should move forward with that timeline and make a presentation, make a resolution around that timeline. The timeline can always be adjusted based upon funding availability. If fundings are not available, then the timeline could be moved to another year, but at least making a resolution of our timeline based upon what we have asked and plan to do. Just like with the counselors, I'm looking at, I'm just multiplying this by 3%. It's probably at least another $3 million next year. So, and then after that, it's more. Every year it gets more expensive. Even that architecture plan that we want $2.8 million for that we haven't received yet, that's going to be more expensive by the time we get ink to paper, pen to paper to draw that thing up. And I also do think I would like to ask our legal counsel, I want to look into it more deeply, that there must be something under the Constitution that when a body votes on something, that how can it be that you vote on something and then the money is not appropriated or not appropriated within a timeline because a vote was taken for a given fiscal year? So the money was supposed to be appropriated within a given fiscal year and hasn't been yet. I don't know if the fiscal year's not over yet, but that seems it seems like that's not something that we could do, and so I'd like to look into that, because the money for the design, we should at least be talking about a design now or going over some drawings and being able to present that to the public. So that's all I'm going to say about Huntington for now. But rest assured, it's on the front of my mind, and it's going to be in the first year of every CIP as long as I can, if I have anything to say about it going forward. All right.
You done?
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah, I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Well, there's great things happening in Newport News Public Schools. Again, I want to thank Ms. Russo and her team for putting the budget that we could at least approve for submittal, and you can hear the passion with this particular board that they wanted more counselors, so we tried to meet them halfway and ask for some. And again, that's kind of, you know, we're trying to be friendly. Dr. Bess and Mr. Harris, I've heard you, so I want people to look at your calendars, and maybe we do need to come in there with a plan, and, you know, sit down with a date. So this passionate, so let us sit down the date. Let's go in there prepared. You know, if we're gonna go, let's go prepared, and schedule a date. Listen, schedule a date that's going to be very close, because again, it's spring break, and by the time we come from spring break, if we do have that meeting on the 9th, I mean, that's the day we come back. So that means we would have to meet the Thursday. We already booked this Thursday, so kind of next week we only have Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, because Thursday, many of us will be in Philadelphia at the National School Board Association. So you want to put that in plan too. So many of us will be gone for another 3 to 4 days. So I hear you, but I definitely want to go in with a plan. I hear you, but let us be proactive in being prepared ourselves when we go down and ask for something. And I'm willing, you know, if we have to meet on the weekend, we have to meet on the weekend. You know, we have to meet for an hour on the weekend. We meet on the weekend. We have to meet on Sunday after church. We have to meet on Sunday after church. I mean, this is what it's going to take. I honestly, this is what it's going to take in order for us to be prepared when we go in. So, and then once we have a date ourselves, then we can go to our constituents and says, hey, this is the date that we're planning, and we can already start greasing that wheel before we get there. And maybe they can have some conversation with their people. And so I do believe I'm going to be optimistic. I'm really going to be optimistic because, as I said again, we just closed that school. It's not been a year. We've closed that school. And as I said again, I'm going to take the blame. If it wasn't for me being a chair last year, that school would probably still be open. That school probably would still be open. I sat on the board for 5 years, and I'm where this board that I sat on 4 years ago, we should take some of that blame as well. Because I didn't go down to Huntington. I didn't see that condition. And, every time, and I didn't know the budget that we need to put it in the first year every year, which we will do from now on, put it in the first year every year. So, the blame it's enough blame all over, It's a blame that goes all over, but we did the right thing for our students. We got them in a place that was conducive to learning, and that building that it was in the shape it was not conducive to learning. And so now they're in a place that they're learning, and so what we need to do is rebuild the place that they should have been at. And so we hear you. Again, I did go to Mega Genesis, which was, I want to thank all the universities that came out and all the groups that came out on Saturday. It was a wonderful time. I mean, to have schools like, Hampton University and Norfolk State, and CNU, they had Notre Dame. I think there was Princeton there. I mean, they had James Madison, George Mason. I mean, you name it, Georgetown. And so those are the types of schools that are trying to recruit our students. I mean, that's what they're doing. They're trying to recruit our students. And so thank you for all those folks that did come down. John, happy birthday.
Happy birthday to you, too.
Yes. And again, I just wanted to tell everyone, because we won't get in front of our students again. This board will not. So I want to have everyone have a very safe and wonderful spring break. And if nothing else, again, thank you, boards, for your passion tonight on the budget as well as on Huntington. This is what we need. I think this is a phenomenal board, and we're going to get it done. That being said, if there's nothing else, I'm going to call adjourn the meeting.
Marathon.